She went to a bachelorette party and a stranger millionaire changed her life with one kiss that night forever. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Let's return to the main character. Her name is Lena Moore, and on that night, she is standing inside a downtown club she never planned to enter. Lights pulsing like a borrowed heartbeat, music pressing against her ribs. She is here for her cousin's bachelorette party. Not for herself, not for trouble, not for memories that last longer than the ride home. Lena tells herself she is invisible, just another bridesmaid holding a plastic flute, smiling when required, counting minutes until she can slip away. She does not notice him at first. Julian Cross is positioned slightly apart from the group, dressed too cleanly for the chaos. Eyes steady in a room designed to blur edges. To everyone else, he looks like a friend of the groom, another name that will be forgotten by morning. To Lena, he is simply the stranger who meets her gaze once, then looks away, as if deciding something without asking permission. The game starts as a joke, laughter sharp with alcohol, a dare shouted over music that vibrates the floor. Kiss a stranger. Spin. Point. Someone pushes Lena forward. She laughs because it is easier than saying no, because being agreeable has always kept her safe. When she looks up, it is him. Julian steps closer, close enough that the noise falls back, close enough that she can smell clean soap beneath the club's heat. He does not grin. He does not rush. He leans in and asks softly if she understands what follows after moments like this. She thinks he is teasing. She nods anyway. His hand settles at her waist, not possessive, not loose, simply certain. The kiss is slower than the crowd expects, slower than a dare deserves. It is not hungry. It is deliberate. For one suspended second, Lena forgets the room, the ring of faces, the phones lifting. Like tiny eyes. She forgets that she is the girl who avoids scenes. When he pulls back, the cheering rushes in, loud and careless. Julian's expression does not change. He looks at her as if he has crossed a line on purpose. Then he disappears. By the time Lena turns again, he is gone, swallowed by bodies and light. The night stumbles on without him. She laughs when her friends laugh, dances when pulled, but something inside her has shifted, like a door left ajar. She feels it later, outside, heels in hand, cool air touching her skin. She feels it the next morning, waking with a quiet dread she cannot name. Messages ping. A video circulates. Her phone lights up with comments that turn the kiss into a story she did not agree to tell. She watches the clip once, only once, and sees herself framed by noise while he remains calm, almost protected by his own restraint. She does not know his name. She does not know his power. She only knows that a single kiss has made her visible in a way she never wanted, and somewhere out there is a man who understood the weight of that moment before she ever did. That knowledge sits heavy, a pressure behind her eyes, because she senses the story has already begun moving without her consent, rolling toward consequences she cannot predict, toward a future where silence may cost more than speaking, and speaking may cost everything she has worked to protect. Tonight, she believes it ends here, but she is wrong, and the wrongness will follow her quietly, patiently, until it asks to be answered. It always does, eventually, when power meets consequence head-on. The morning after the party arrives without drama, which almost makes it worse. Lena wakes in her small apartment with sunlight slicing across the floor and the dull ache of knowing something has shifted. Her phone rests face down on the nightstand like it is ashamed to be there. She showers, dresses, moves through familiar motions, hoping routine will reset her back into herself. It does not. When she finally checks her screen, the messages are already stacked. Bridesmaid group chats buzzing. A short video clipped and shared. A freeze frame where her face is turned up toward a man she does not know. Lips parted, eyes closed. Someone has added a laughing emoji. Someone else has written that she looks brave. Lena does not feel brave. She feels exposed, as if a private thought slipped out of her mouth in public. She deletes nothing. She answers no one. Instead, she focuses on the world she understands, the one she had before the kiss tried to rename her. Lena works mornings at a small floral studio near the river, the kind of place that smells like wet leaves and promise. She ties ribbons, trims stems, lifts buckets that weigh almost 40 pounds when full, and tells herself that beauty is something you assemble quietly, with care. Her boss asks if she is tired. Lena says yes, and means more than sleep. By noon, the video has reached people she does not know. A college friend texts to ask if she is famous now. Lena turns her phone off and keeps working, fingers steady because they have learned to be. The rest of the day moves slowly. On the bus ride home, she watches storefronts pass and thinks about how the night began as a favor, a promise to show up for family, not a gamble. She remembers standing at the edge of the dance floor, laughing at things she did not find funny, counting songs. She remembers how Julian, still a stranger then, did not try to be charming. He had asked a question instead, if she could handle what followed. The memory bothers her because it suggests intent. Lena has always believed mistakes announce themselves loudly, that you know when you are about to fall. This one had whispered. At home, she reheats leftovers and eats standing up. She tells herself the man is gone, that nothing real can grow from a moment built for spectacle. She tells herself power lives elsewhere, not in clubs, not in passing kisses. She does not yet know how wrong she is. 2 days later, a message arrives from her cousin, apologetic and breathless, asking if Lena can help with an event setup. It is a last-minute favor, paid, respectable, nothing dramatic. Lena says yes because saying no feels like hiding. The venue is downtown, all glass and polished concrete, a place where voices echo and people stand taller without noticing. Lena arrives early, badge clipped, hair pulled back, mind on centerpieces. She moves through the space unnoticed, grateful for the anonymity. Then the room changes. Temperature. It is subtle, a tightening of attention. Screens light up at the front. A man steps into view, framed by quiet applause. Lena recognizes him before the name appears because recognition does not require context. Julian Cross. The letters look heavier than his name should. Founder. Owner. Words stacked beneath his face like scaffolding. Lena stands still, bouquet halfway finished, heart doing something it has never done at work. She watches him greet people with the same restraint he showed in the club, calm and careful, as if he understands exactly how much weight he carries. He does not scan the room. He does not search. When his eyes pass over her, they do not stop. The denial is precise. It hurts more than surprise would have. In that moment, Lena understands the shape of the power gap, not as wealth, but as choice. He can decide who exists. She finishes her task, hands moving because they must, thoughts racing because they cannot help it. The video did not make her visible to him. The kiss did not give her acclaim. She feels foolish for expecting even acknowledgement. Later, as the crowd thickens and voices rise, a woman she does not know leans close and asks if she was at the party. The question lands softly and cuts anyway. Lena smiles and steps back. She is learning how stories spread, how quickly a moment can outrun the truth. She leaves before the speeches end, walking out into the afternoon with the sense that the night did not end when the lights came on. It followed her here. And somewhere behind the glass, a man who knows her name without asking is making decisions that will reach her whether she consents or not. The distance between them has never been wider, and yet it hums, alive, waiting. Days pass, and the silence becomes its own presence. Lena returns to the floral studio each morning, hands busy, thoughts louder than the clippers snapping stems. She tells herself that the man from the stage is not part of her life, that proximity does not equal connection. Yet the city has a way of folding people back into their reflections. Invitations appear on the studio calendar for corporate arrangements under a name she now recognizes. Crosswell events, Crosswell dinners, Crosswell charity galas. The orders are precise, expensive, impersonal. Lena does not see Julian's signature, but she feels his orbit. At night, she replays the question he asked before the kiss, not the kiss itself. If she could handle what followed. It sounds different now, less flirtation and more warning. She wonders if he asked because he already knew the cost. A week after the event, her cousin calls, nervous, apologetic, asking if Lena is all right. The party chatter has turned sharper, the story reshaped by people who were not there. A woman named Vanessa Hale keeps coming up, a friend of the bride with a talent for making moments sting. Lena listens and says she is fine, because fine is a shield that fits. She goes for long walks after work, counting steps across bridges, letting the river swallow her thoughts. She tells herself that power is loud, obvious, announced from stages. What she does not see is the quieter version moving around her. Julian Cross spends those same days canceling meetings he usually never misses. He sits through briefings without hearing them, eyes on screens that show numbers and faces, one clip muted and removed wherever it surfaces. He authorizes calls he does not enjoy making. He tells his team to handle it without spectacle. No statements, no threats, no names. He is careful because care is the only language that does not bruise. He does not reach out to Lena because reaching would tip the scale. He knows what people do when they think a woman benefits from attention. He refuses to add weight to her shoulders. Instead, he chooses distance, a decision that costs him sleep and buys her quiet, or so he hopes. Lena notices the quiet even if she does not understand it. The message is slow. The video disappears from feeds. The laughter fades into something less sharp. Relief arrives with confusion. She had braced for fallout, for whispers that follow like shadows. Instead, there is space, and space asks questions. She wonders who paid for the silence and why. At a small industry mixer weeks later, Lena attends reluctantly, name badge turned inward. She keeps to the edges, accepts compliments on arrangements, declines drinks. Vanessa finds her anyway, voice smooth, smile calibrated. She mentions the party, the kiss, the man. She does not say Julian's name at first. She waits for it to land. When she finally does, Lena feels the room tilt, not from surprise but from the ease with which Vanessa claims proximity. It is not jealousy that burns, but humiliation, the sense of being reduced to a footnote in someone else's narrative. Lena replies politely and leaves early, breath tight, resolve thinner than she would like. Outside, the air is cool and honest. She decides she will not be rewritten. She will not become a rumor. The next morning, an email arrives at the studio requesting Lena by name for a consultation on a private installation. The sender is an assistant she does not know. The location is a building she recognizes from the news. Crosswell headquarters. The message is professional, neutral, optional. Lena stares at it longer than necessary. This is how power works, she realizes, not with demands, but with doors that open quietly and dare you to step through. She drafts a response, deletes it, drafts another. She tells herself that accepting is not surrender, that refusing is not safety. She agrees to the meeting with conditions she lists carefully, time limited, scope defined. When she hits send, her pulse steadies. She has chosen movement over fear. Across the city, Julian receives the confirmation and exhales, a fraction of relief he does not allow himself to name. He does not plan a speech. He plans restraint. He plans to be smaller than his title, to let her stand where she can see him clearly, not elevated, not obscured. He understands now that the kiss was never the point. The point was what followed, the way consequence asks to be carried. As the date approaches, Lena prepares arrangements that feel like armor, elegant and controlled. She does not know what will be said or unsaid. She only knows that the distance between them has shifted from accidental to deliberate, and deliberate distances can be crossed. Whether they should be is another question entirely, one the city seems to hold its breath to hear answered. The Crosswell headquarters rises clean and quiet against the morning, all glass and intention, and Lena feels smaller the moment she steps inside. Security checks her name, nods without curiosity, and hands her a badge that opens doors she never imagined touching. The elevator hums upward, carrying her away from street noise and into a world that smells like polished wood and patience. She rehearses neutrality, reminding herself that she is here for flowers, not answers. When the doors open, she is guided into a conference room flooded with light, a long table empty except for water set at one place. Julian is already there, standing near the window, city spread beneath him like a map he has memorized. He turns when he hears her, expression measured, posture careful, as if even movement must be earned. He does not apologize. He does not smile. He says her name once, softly, like a question answered privately. Lena places her bag down and meets his eyes. The silence stretches, thick but not hostile. He gestures to the chair across from him, not beside him, a choice that matters. She sits and sets out sketches, explaining concepts with a steadiness that surprises her. He listens without interrupting, asks practical questions, respects boundaries with an attention that feels intentional. When the business is done, he does not end the meeting. He acknowledges the party without embellishment, without excuses. He says he made a decision that night and another decision afterward. He says he chose to be careful. Lena hears what he does not say. She hears the weight of his restraint and the cost of it. She asks him why he asked her that question before the kiss. He does not deflect. He says he wanted consent for consequences, not just contact. The answer unsettles her because it is thoughtful where she expected charm. She tells him that consequences found her anyway. He nods, accepting the truth without defense. He explains the silence, the removed clips, the quiet work done to keep her from becoming a headline. He says he did it without expecting gratitude, and she believes him because there is no performance in his voice. Still, something in her tightens. Protection feels too close to control when it arrives without invitation. She tells him that distance hurt more than noise. The admission lands between them, fragile and honest. Julian does not argue. He says distance was the only way he knew how to stay out of her story. Lena stands, signaling the end she needs. He stands too, mirroring without advancing. As she turns to leave, he asks one thing, not for forgiveness, not for more. He asks if she would be willing to meet once more, publicly, where the rules are clear. A charity gala, flowers on a stage, witnesses everywhere. He says he will follow her. Lead. The offer is not romantic. It is respectful. Lena does not answer immediately. She walks out into the hallway, heart loud, thoughts colliding. The elevator ride down feels longer. On the street, the city presses in, ordinary and grounding. She texts her cousin, confirms the date, and then texts the assistant to accept the gala request with conditions spelled out. When Julian receives the message, he closes his eyes for a moment he allows only himself to see. The gala arrives dressed in elegance and expectation. Lena works the room with practiced ease, arrangements placed like quiet statements. She senses Julian before she sees him, the way attention shifts. Vanessa is there, too, smile sharp, eyes calculating. When Vanessa approaches Lena, the air tightens. She congratulates her on the attention, mentions the kiss like a pin pushed gently into skin. Lena responds calmly, refuses the bait. Across the room, Julian watches without intervening, honoring the line he promised not to cross. Later, on stage, he thanks donors and names partners, voice even, authority contained. He invites Lena forward to speak about the installation. It is a public acknowledgement that does not define her by him. She steps into the light and speaks with clarity, grounded in craft, not spectacle. Applause follows, genuine and sustained. Afterward, they stand near the exit, the night cool and waiting. Julian asks quietly if the kiss still defines the story. Lena considers the question, the city, the choice before her. She says the story is still being written. He nods, accepting the uncertainty without protest. As she walks away, she feels the pull of what might come next, not as a promise, but as a possibility that refuses to be ignored. The days after the gala settle into a quieter rhythm that feels earned rather than imposed. Lena returns to the floral studio with a steadiness that surprises her, the applause still echoing faintly, but no longer defining the room she stands in. Orders continue to arrive under the Crosswell name, yet they feel different now, transparent, procedural, stripped of mystery. She notices how her co-workers look at her with new respect, not curiosity, and she recognizes the shift as something fragile she intends to protect. Julian does not call. He does not send flowers. He does not appear unannounced. Instead, he keeps the promise he made by letting space exist without pressure. The restraint becomes its own language, one Lena learns to read. When she thinks of him, it is not the kiss that returns but the way he stood a half step back, the way he waited for her words to lead. They cross paths again by coincidence that feels too precise to be random. A community fundraiser at a riverside park needs arrangements repaired after a sudden storm. Lena arrives with buckets and twine, shoes sinking slightly into wet grass. Julian is already there, jacket rolled at the elbows, helping volunteers lift tables that weigh more than he should carry. No cameras. No announcements. When their eyes meet, There is recognition without claim. They work side by side without speaking much, hands moving in parallel, sharing tools, sharing silence. The closeness is different here, grounded and unobserved. At one point, Lena slips on the slick ground and steadies herself against his arm. He does not tighten his grip. He waits until she is balanced before letting go. The moment lingers longer than it should, not because of desire, but because of trust. Vanessa appears near the end, immaculate despite the mud, laughter bright and edged. She makes a point of greeting Julian first, placing herself squarely between him and Lena. The message is clear even if the words are polite. Lena watches Julian respond with courtesy and distance, refusing to play the part offered to him. The choice costs him ease. It buys Lena dignity. That night, Lena walks home alone, the city warm and familiar. She considers how attraction changes when it is not fed by spectacle. She considers how power looks when it steps aside. Julian, for his part, sits in his apartment overlooking streets that never sleep and feels the strain of wanting something he refuses to take. He knows that patience is not passive. It is a decision repeated daily. He receives a report from his team about the fundraiser, about Vanessa's interest in aligning publicly again. He declines without explanation. He does not owe anyone clarity except the woman whose life he touched without permission. Weeks pass. The slow burn deepens, built from small intersections and careful exits. A note arrives at the studio thanking Lena for the park work, signed simply with a first name. She keeps it tucked in her apron, a private reminder that acknowledgement does not need an audience. Then the city shifts. A feature runs about Crosswell Group expanding into nightlife spaces, revisiting the very club where the kiss happened. The timing feels deliberate. The past circles back with teeth. Comments stir online. The story threatens to resurface, reshaped again by people who are not there. Lena feels the old pressure rise, the familiar fear of being reduced. Julian reaches out for the first time, not with defense, but with disclosure. He tells her what is coming, asks what she wants done, waits for her answer. The choice is hers. She tells him she will not hide, but she will not be framed either. He agrees to follow her lead publicly, even if it complicates business. The decision costs him leverage and earns her agency. They meet at a cafe halfway between their worlds, sit across from each other with coffee cooling. No hands touch. No promises are made. They discuss boundaries, language, timing. It is unromantic and deeply intimate. When they leave, Lena feels the pull of something stronger than attraction, a partnership built on consent and consequence. As the club announcement date approaches, tension hums through the city like a low wire. Vanessa's name appears again in whispers. Lena prepares arrangements for a press event she knows will test her resolve. Julian prepares to stand where he can be seen without shielding her from view. Neither knows how the crowd will choose to read them. Both know the slow burn has carried them to the edge of a moment that will demand more than restraint. It will demand a choice made out loud, and the city is listening. The press event arrives wrapped in intention, cameras arranged like polite witnesses, microphones waiting for a version of the truth they can digest. Lena arrives early with arrangements that soften sharp angles, white and green chosen for calm rather than spectacle. She moves with purpose, greeting staff, checking placements, keeping her breathing steady. This is not her first public space, but it is the first where her presence carries a shadow she did not choose. Julian arrives later, unobtrusive, dressed simply, attention contained. He does not seek her out immediately. He waits until she looks up and finds him already standing where she can see him clearly, neither behind nor above her. They exchange a nod that says more than words could manage. The announcement begins. Executives speak about investment and revitalization. Numbers are named. The club is framed as a community asset reborn. Lena listens, hands folded, knowing the past sits just beneath the polished surface. When the floor opens for questions, the air shifts. A reporter asks about nightlife culture and responsibility. Another asks about optics. Then Vanessa steps forward, invited or not, voice sweet and precise, referencing a viral moment from months ago as an example of how stories begin in places like clubs. The room tightens. Lena feels heat climb her neck, the old instinct to disappear rising fast. Julian does not interrupt. He looks at Lena first, giving her the choice he promised. She steps forward before fear can veto her. She introduces herself by name and role, claims the space without apology. She speaks about work and consent, about how moments are reduced when context is stripped away, about how women are asked to carry narratives they did not write. She does not mention the kiss. She does not mention Julian. She reframes the story until it no longer belongs to gossip. Applause follows, tentative then firm. Vanessa smiles thinly and retreats. Julian steps up after, voice calm, backing Lena's words without claiming proximity. He states that no personal moment should be leveraged for profit or spectacle, including his own. The turning point lands quietly but decisively. After the event, outside under a sky that threatens rain, Julian approaches Lena. There is relief in his eyes, but also gravity. He thanks her for choosing visibility on her terms. She tells him she did it for herself. The truth sits between them, honest and unguarded. He tells her there is something else she deserves to know, something he should have said earlier. He confesses that the night of the party was not chance, that he had recognized her from the crowd because she was not performing. He says the kiss was not a dare accepted but a boundary tested with care. He admits that he chose to step back afterward because he did not trust his ability to be fair if he stayed close. The admission reframes everything. Lena listens, heart loud, anger and understanding colliding. She tells him that intention does not erase impact. He agrees without qualification. He does not ask for forgiveness. He says he is here to answer, not to persuade. The rain begins, light and insistent. They step under an awning. Close but not touching. Lena feels the weight of the moment settle into her bones. This is the place where the story could turn toward comfort or fracture into caution. She asks him one question, whether he is capable of wanting her without shaping her life. He answers slowly, saying he is learning how to want without taking, how to be present without pulling the world toward himself. She believes him and still hesitates. The honesty costs something on both sides. She tells him she needs time that is not managed, days without schedules or assistance. He agrees and offers nothing further. As they part, a hand briefly brushes, accidental and electric. The distance afterward is different, charged with possibility rather than fear. Lena walks home through rain that feels cleansing, aware that she has crossed a line she cannot uncross. Julian returns to his office and makes a decision that will ripple outward, instructing his team to pause the club project indefinitely until community voices are integrated, knowing it will anger partners. He does it without announcing the reason. The emotional turning point has passed. Neither of them can return to before. They have chosen truth over ease, and the choice has teeth. As the city absorbs the news, whispers start again, reshaped by respect and resistance. Lena senses the next challenge forming, a test not of rumor, but of resolve. She does not know if love is waiting. She knows that whatever comes next will ask more than restraint. It will ask courage, and the answer will not be quiet. The backlash does not arrive all at once. It seeps in. Partners question timelines. Editorials speculate about motive. Comment sections sharpen their knives. Lena feels it first in the quiet ways, a delayed permit, a vendor backing out, a polite email that suddenly asks for extra documentation. She understands escalation when she sees it, the kind that pretends to be neutral. Julian feels it too, board members requesting briefings, investors asking whether restraint signals weakness. He answers calmly, refuses to redirect blame, absorbs pressure that would normally be deflected downward. The distance he promised Lena becomes harder to maintain, not because he wants to cross it, but because the world keeps trying to push them together as a headline. Vanessa moves through the noise with practiced grace, offering interviews that frame her concern as care, implying that's certain. Women thrive on proximity to power. She never says Lena's name. She does not have to. Lena hears the echo anyway. She doubles down on work, arrives earlier, leaves later, keeps her voice even. At home, she sorts receipts and plans budgets, grounding herself in facts that do not bend. One afternoon, the studio loses a major contract without explanation. The owner breaks the news gently, eyes apologetic. Lena nods, swallows the familiar sting. She does not tell Julian. She refuses to let loss become leverage. Julian learns about the contract through a third party and understands the message immediately. He requests a meeting with the client and is told it would not be appropriate. The punishment is indirect and effective. He respects Lena's boundary and still makes a decision that will expose him. He declines a lucrative sponsorship publicly, citing misalignment with community values, knowing the gesture will be read as stubbornness. The tension crests at a charity council meeting where both are expected to attend. The room is formal, the mood brittle. Vanessa arrives late, commanding attention. When discussion turns to funding priorities, she suggests reallocations that would quietly defund arts initiatives, the very programs Lena supports. Julian watches Lena stiffen. He waits for her signal. She does not look at him. She stands and speaks anyway, voice steady, detailing impact with numbers and lived examples. Vanessa counters with a smile and a story designed to sound reasonable. The room wavers. Julian intervenes then, not as savior but as witness, corroborating Lena's data, placing his vote in line with hers without centering himself. The motion passes narrowly. The cost is immediate. A senior board member pulls Julian aside and warns him about optics. Julian listens and says he understands. Outside, Lena confronts him, anger sharp with fear. She accuses him of making things worse, of inviting retaliation that will land on her. The argument is low-voiced and intense, words clipped to avoid spectacle. Julian does not defend himself. He acknowledges the risk and apologizes for acting without checking whether she wanted support in that room. The admission deflates some of the anger but leaves the hurt intact. Lena says she cannot keep paying for his learning curve. The line lands hard. They part without resolution. That night, an anonymous article drops, rehashing the kiss with new insinuations, suggesting quid pro quo without evidence. Lena reads it once and feels the floor tilt. Julian reads it and feels a cold clarity. He understands that quiet is no longer protection. He calls Lena and asks to meet, not to plan a rebuttal, but to listen. She agrees because the story has reached her doorstep. They sit in her apartment, shoes off, city noise filtering in. Julian brings no team, no notes. He tells her he is prepared to step back entirely from public roles connected to her world if that is what safety requires. He offers to make a statement that centers consent and accountability without naming her. He offers to do nothing if that is her choice. Lena listens, exhausted and clear. She tells him she will not be erased to make his redemption cleaner. She will not accept protection that costs her voice. She asks him to stand beside her in one specific way, publicly and briefly, then step away. He agrees without conditions. The next day, they release a joint statement drafted by Lena, read by Julian, concise and unadorned, naming responsibility and boundaries, refusing spectacle. The response is mixed, loud and contradictory. What changes is not the noise but the line they draw through it. Still, the damage lingers. Funding freezes. Invitations dry up. Lena feels the weight of consequence settle deeper. Julian watches her carry it, and knows restraint is no longer enough. Something decisive must follow, something that shifts the ground rather than absorbing blows. He does not tell her yet. He prepares quietly, knowing the next move will either end the story or redefine it entirely, and the choice will test whether redemption can withstand loss. The decision reveals itself without announcement, the way true choices often do. Lena notices first in the smallest places, a return call that used to go unanswered, a permit approved without extra conditions, an arts council agenda quietly amended to restore funding. The city does not apologize, but it recalibrates. She learns why a week later, not from Julian, but from a community organizer who thanks her for insisting on independence. Crosswell Group has transferred ownership of the club project into a public trust, removing its profit motive entirely, placing governance in the hands of neighborhood representatives, artists, and workers. Julian has stepped away from the board that would have overseen it, recusing himself publicly and permanently. There is no press conference, no ribbon cutting. The move costs him leverage, reputation among peers who measure success differently, and a stream of income he once considered inevitable. The choice lands as a quiet thud that changes the ground. Lena reads the trust documents line by line, understanding the implication. This is not protection. It is relinquishment. She meets Julian at the site in the early morning before crews arrive. Concrete floors cool, lights slanting through high windows. He is there already, sleeves rolled, hands empty. He tells her what he did and why, without asking what it earns him. He says he wanted to remove himself from the equation so her work would not orbit his power. He says he learned that wanting does not grant proximity, that love, if it comes, must stand after accountability. Lena listens, breath slow, the weight of months shifting inside her chest. She asks him what he wants now. He says he wants to know whether she can choose him freely, without consequences leaning in. He does not move closer. The restraint is deliberate and complete. Outside, a small group gathers, not press, just neighbors curious about the building that once loomed in rumor. Lena steps forward and explains the trust, the open calls for proposals, the way space will be shared. Julian stands behind her, silent, present, not central. The dynamic is visible and unmistakable. Vanessa arrives late, scanning for advantage that no longer exists. She realizes it at the same moment the crowd does. The spotlight has moved, and it does not include her. She leaves without comment. As the morning unfolds, Lena feels something like peace settle, not relief, but alignment. Later, she and Julian walk along the river, side by side, hands not touching, conversation ordinary and careful. They talk about schedules, about small hopes, about how trust is built by repetition rather than spectacle. Julian tells her he has declined another board seat and accepted a sabbatical from public leadership, choosing to invest time in learning rather than directing. Lena tells him she is considering opening a cooperative studio, one that teaches craft without gatekeeping. He offers resources without strings, names of people, not money. She accepts the names. The quiet climax arrives without ceremony that evening, when they stand at the edge of the water and the city hums behind them. Julian asks one question, simple and complete. He asks if she would like to walk with him for a while, no labels, no promises, no hiding. Lena considers the path behind them, the noise endured, the dignity reclaimed. She answers yes, not as surrender, but as consent renewed. The choice is mutual and modest, and that is its power. They do not kiss. They stand close enough to feel warmth, to feel the future as possibility rather than demand. As they part, Lena notices how the story has shifted again, not toward romance alone, but toward a recalibration of power that leaves room for tenderness to exist without debt. The city does not pause, but something essential has been decided. The quiet has weight now, and it will carry forward into whatever comes next, whether tested by time or strengthened by it, because the ground beneath them has been changed, and the change will not easily be undone. Tom does not rush them after that morning by the river. It settles. Weeks pass marked by ordinary miracles, coffee shared before work, messages sent without urgency, evenings that end without spectacle. Lena opens the cooperative studio in a renovated warehouse filled with light and the honest smell of wood and stems. Classes fill slowly, then steadily. People arrive with hands eager to learn and stories they do not need to trade for access. Julian shows up when invited and stays invisible when asked. He listens more than he speaks. He learns how to be present without shaping outcomes. The city watches, then turns its attention elsewhere, hungry for louder dramas. The trust holds. The club becomes a place run by many voices, not one. The night that once threatened to define Lena fades into context, no longer a headline, just a hinge in memory. On a cool evening months later, Lena hosts an opening for her students, walls lined with work that carries care rather than ambition. Julian stands near the back, hands in pockets, smiling at moments that are not his. When she finishes speaking, she finds him by the door. They step outside together, air crisp, laughter drifting behind them. He asks if she wants to walk. She nods. They move without destination, the city familiar and kind. At the corner where the club once glowed loud and careless, they stop. Music leaks softly now, restrained, communal. Julian looks at her and says he has one thing left to ask, and if the answer is no, it will remain no. He asks if she would like to kiss him again, not to begin a story, but to acknowledge the one they survived. Lena considers the weight of that night and the work that followed, the boundaries held, the power released. She leans in and kisses him once, brief and certain, without witnesses. When they part, the moment feels complete rather than hungry. The surprise is not the kiss, but how little it needs to prove. They walk on, hands brushing, then finding each other naturally, unannounced. The ending does not arrive with a ring or a vow. It arrives with a decision made daily to choose consent over assumption, integrity over convenience, love over leverage. Lena knows her life changed because of a kiss, but not in the way stories usually sell. It changed because two people refused to let power write the ending. If there is a lesson here, it is quiet and sturdy. Kindness without control builds trust. Accountability makes room for love. When someone steps back so you can stand fully, that space becomes the beginning of something real. Thank you for spending this time with us. If this story moved you, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it with someone who might need the reminder. Your support helps us keep telling stories that choose depth over noise. We will see you again soon.